G'day, my name's Chris and welcome to Flat Tank Journey. Welcome to another episode working on my little BSA Deluxe 1927, or the Wedge tank as I'm calling it. Interrupting the front wheel for exciting news that would not include that headlight that I'm cleaning, but that would include a back wheel. So welcome back and check that out. I'm excited, officially excited. I got a back wheel. I put a shout out on Facebook into one of the groups I'm here on in Australia, and a lady contacted me. Husband doesn't really do social media, and he had a back wheel. So I spoke to Gary a couple of times on the phone and arranged to go and meet him. He was a wealth of information. But what he did have was genuine Wedge tank back wheel. So it was super. It's complete, more or less. The rim's a bit tired and needs replaced, but the rest of it is really good. I've got some other amazing stuff to show you that I got from Gary as well. So come in, let's have a closer look at this thing, and then we'll move on to, well, not quite as exciting as the wheel, but it was exciting anyway. Rightio. Here's the wheel up on the bench. It's looking super. See this little washer? This is interesting because a friend of Gary's made this. It's a reproduction part. And I've got more to tell you about that in a minute. Here's the brake plate with the operating arm on it. It's got a little bend in it. But that needs straightened out. But nonetheless, it's good. It's got brake shoes. It's got springs. Everything's in there. Super fine. Super happy about it. It'll clean up really well. We'll probably have to get it rebonded and that'll be okay. Here's the wheel itself. Now, a little bit rusty inside, but you know, no big deal. Now, I've already been into it and I've replaced the bearings in it. I left this cup and cone. I'm not sure why I got possessed with this one and felt a need to leave it alone. It's got the right axle in it, it's got the right bearings in it, it's got the right cups and cones in it, it's got the right nuts on it, everything's right. So I decided to leave it alone. I bought new bearings, that wasn't difficult. And I actually bought the metric bearings and seals to put in it and then stopped and decided I wouldn't. The rim isn't too bad, but Gary himself thought it needed replaced. It's a 19. It's been painted grey and there's no sprocket. I am going to take the sprocket off the C11 hub that I got and see if that fits. C11 sprockets can be bought, but they're about $200. So I really want to know it fits before I buy one. But we'll see about that in a little bit. So everything's there and that looks super. What I want to show you before we put this on the bike is the other bits I got from Gary, because they're just as interesting. Take two. This box is full of reproduction parts that, and I hope I get this right, and I wish I could remember the gent's name. A friend of the guy who sold me the rear wheel was making all of these parts to eventually start to sell them to restorers, I suppose just like me. So we've got that special washer made for the rear wheel. I bought a clutch operation arm off Gary. And of course, mine's broken. Now, when I actually went to Gary's, I wasn't sure whether mine was broken, but bought this anyway. Super. A reproduction knob for the gear change lever, made out of aluminium, but a perfect reproduction. He's reproduced the oil tap that I waxed lyrically over in the first episode, I think. This one's perfect. Been re-nickeled and everything. Now, I think that's a clutch nut, but I'm not sure. I recognise the part, so I bought one. Rear wheel adjuster plates that will go with that wheel and make it complete. The elusive and rather quirky front brake cable rod mechanism. So I have this piece. I never got the top piece that screws in, that adjusts the cable. And it's longer than I thought it was going to be, but you can wait, you'll be right. And then the bottom piece where the cable mounts through it and pulls a rod up and down to the front brake. Bloody fascinating. To get offered a reproduction part like that was super. I was very, very pleased and, to be honest, quite honoured to buy the parts. The adjuster that goes on the top of the primary chain case. A gear shift mechanism, I suppose. Not gear shift mechanism, but an indicator. That's actually an original part, but in very, very, very good condition. I bought one anyway. And then I'm just going to empty the rest of these parts because there's lots of littles. Now, Gary did tell me what double sprung washers are actually called, because I think Gary was a machinist of some description. So he actually gave me these, some double sprung washers that have all kind of got linked together now in some magical form. You know what it's like when you push them together. There's two sizes and they're very common on old Beezers. Remember I talked about the gear change, the gearbox adjuster? There it is. Didn't have the tanged piece, but I got two of them with the bike and only one of these. So that's super. This is a kickstart stop off the gearbox, and I was missing mine. Well, that's what I think it is. I'm having trouble remembering now. Now, all these little small nuts are, and people will recognise them that know, are gearbox nuts. And they have a little shoulder on the back. And every time you buy a used gearbox, they're gone. I bought 10 of them. I didn't want to hog all the parts, but Gary had a container full. Now these nuts, and there's actually two separate nuts here, they're off early BSAs, and one is an oil fitting and one is a fuel fitting. And you put the pipe through it, flare the pipe, and it acts as a compression fitting. So they're the same nut with different size holes. Don't ask me which one's which, I forget. The last thing that he had was tank mount nuts. And I bought 4 of them off him. They're perfect reproductions when you see the originals. Again, I didn't want to hog original parts. Or nice reproduction parts. But to come across this stuff was astounding. Now, when I went to pay Gary for this stuff, embarrassingly, he won a lot for it, so I had to give him more money than he asked for. True story, I didn't want to take the piss out of Gary. These, to me, were very valuable, and I gave him a little more than he asked for. He was a very, very, very fair man, who was mainly only interested in restorations, not interested in money. And that's lovely to see in the old bike world. Somebody who's interested in parts, getting them to the right people, and not gouging someone for them. And on top of that, he gave me a little vintage drawer to store everything in. And everything came home in Gary's drawer, and it'll probably remain Gary's drawer for all the time I have it. Anyway, super collection of parts. Gonna use them, gonna love them. And now let's get this wheel on the bike and have a look at it. Right, we're over here at the bike. And yes, I've got the front of the bike covered because I don't want to spoil the video that comes after this one where we do more work on the front. And I'm doing bits and pieces as I get to it and as I find parts and get parts. So you're going to have to live with that one. Exciting though. Front wheel. No, back wheel. So as you'd expect with an original part, everything goes in and there's no pushing and shoving and there's no grunting and sweating, which, I'm sure everyone's relieved with. And, you put it in and the nuts go on. Now, that needs to go up to there, and then the plate would be bent back to the mounting lug, and the rear wheel goes on. Now, I think these adjusters go on the inside. Well, that's what it looks like. There's a couple of adjusters, adjustment lugs, but I'm not really sure where they go. So I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over them in the short term. But there's the rear wheel, and it needs a lot of work. It'll get a new rim on it, it'll get relaced, and it'll be great. I'm going to set to and bend this back out and get some nuts and get that brake plate bolted up, and I'm going to feel good about that. Thanks to Gary. I don't know whether you'll ever see this, Gary, but I really, really appreciated him reaching out. He didn't want the world for the wheel. I think I paid $130. $130. Cheap as. Anyway, he was very kind about it. Of course, it will need rebonded and there'll be another 100 and it will need relaced. And it does need a new rim, but it's correct. It's correct. And it fits. And I don't have to stress about it. Anyway, good result. Haven't quite got that in the right place. But there we go. Good outcome. Hopefully you can see. I've got excited and I've just put this brake plate into the vise. I'm just going to try and cold bend this straight again. And that's moved. Most of the time I find when something's bent, it wants to go back where it came from. And it wants to go back. Let's try this back on the bike. Second fit of the wheel, I've already had it in and out a dozen times, but I've bent the brake arm. Let's see if we get that in the right place now. As you put the wheel in, slide it over the brake, over the holder. Didn't get it right. And in it goes. And the piece in the brake arm has gone over a bolt on the back, and we can tighten that down or find a nut for it. And I might slip away, find the right size nut, maybe a cheeky little spring washer, and we'll tighten that up. It'll be a good result. Down here at the bench, and I've got the rear wheel out of the wedge tank with me. And I've disassembled the C11 hub that I bought because I thought, oh well, Sprocket's at $200 for a C11. I thought, oh wow, maybe it fits. Now, this is what I'd intended to make a rear wheel out of. I didn't think I'd ever get off at a rear wheel, to be honest. I thought, oh, maybe they're the same. You can tell straight away they're not the same. I'm not sure how to show you, but here's the face plates of the wedge tank wheel that wants to fall over, and the bearing and the C11 wheel. Now the C11 wheel has lugs that the sprocket fits on, and when you turn it just right, the lugs line up and then you bolt it. Nah, that's not how it works on the wedge tank wheel. The actual plate's a different size, or the edge of the hub. This is 130 mil, that's 120 mil. They're very similar, and I think you could probably get away with it if you really wanted to, and I did. The other side is the same. They're they're different. Sorry, they're not the same. They're different. And when you look at them, you know straight away. So I'll bring it a bit closer to you, and you don't need to see me. Here's the two hubs. Visually different. Now, I assume all this is bearing, and I could knock all that off. But this area is different. This is set up for the brake plate to slide over the top. This does too, except the brake plate's much wider, and the spokes are here. The spokes are set back. So, not the same hub, bloody similar, but not the same hub. So, I think it could work if you had the right gear. The question I was asking myself today was, don't drop it on the floor, Chris, was does the sprocket fit? Because I thought it would. Now sadly, and I have tried, the answer is no, it doesn't. As soon as I saw 6-hole pattern and 6-hole pattern, I thought, you beauty, this is going to fit. But this 6-hole pattern is a different diameter to that 6-hole pattern. So that's a bit of a shame. And there's 9 holes on this plate, but none of the incarnations of the 9 holes line up onto the 6 holes. You'd have to re-drill the whole hub, the whole sprocket. And then I don't think there'd actually be room to get it to line up. I'm not sure how you'd make it fit. You may be able to weld up the holes and re-drill it, but it seems like an awful lot of work. Now, on a really weird set of circumstances, I have a sprocket left over, well, not left over, that I bought to go with my 27. Now, they're markedly different sizes, like monumentally different. And one has a much bigger offset than the other in the offset of the teeth to the mounting plate. Now, I need to get something in the bike and see how these fit and what sort of offset we need. Now, I'm going to call that a 3/4 of an inch offset. It's big. Might be able to do it on the bench. Yep, 3/4 of an inch. This, I know, is 1/4 of an inch. Weirdly, when you put it on, all the holes line up. Well, it's probably not actually weirdly at all, is it? That's off a 27 BSA through to sloper, 29 sloper, I think, and it fits on there. Now, I need to work out what the gearing ratios are on this thing and see whether that's a plausible thing to use. And I need to see what it's like in the gearbox and how it all lines up. But C11, not the same as Wedge tank. Fitting nuts by feel is not one of my favourite pastimes. But I thought I'd bolt this up. I don't know. Have I got a lot to lose? I don't know whether this is going to fit or not. Anyway, I've got 3 bolts in it. So that's off the sloper, or the 27. But massive difference in sprocket size. Can't be right. Let's try it on the bike. Let's try popping this in the bike. See what happens. Not a lot, I suspect, because I don't actually think it fits. Well, it fits. Well, what's it look like when you line it up? Well, disturbingly, I say disturbingly, it looks like it lines up with the sprocket. I don't know what to do about that now, because the gearing would be all wrong. Anyway, let's look a bit closer. Well, there it is on the bike. It kind of looks massive. But it does line up down the line of the bike to the gearbox. Or is it just that I want it to? Not sure. I'll try a string line and see what I think. It shows that the C11 sprocket was not going to fit because the offsets are so different. So I might have dodged a bullet. Never know. Will this work? How many teeth are on the normal sprocket? I need to go and do a bit of research and get back to you. I hope you enjoyed that. The guy with the parts, amazing. The generosity of the guy selling me the wheel, amazing again. The fit up, well, that looks good. It's an original part. Couldn't be easier, could it? I don't think I've had a result like that in a long time. Shows what happens when you get the right parts. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Got a lot coming up in the next couple of weeks. Going to start some disassembly, hoping some parts start to arrive. Got to do something about bars. I might do something a bit outrageous. Anyway, we'll see. In the meantime, like, comment, hit the subscribe button if you would. Cheers. Have a good one.